الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين. My dear brothers and sisters, it's an honor to be here again in Woking. As you know, it's a place that I've always felt comfortable here, and you've always welcomed me very warmly, so it's good to be here. Just a couple quick points before I start the lecture. First thing, the brother announced that not all the money has been paid. Don't worry about that. Don't pay any more money. Inshallah, I'm not here to make money or anything like that, so don't worry about it. Second thing, in the email, there was an email that was circulated about this event. There's a couple points about that. One of them, which Sayyid Mohsin mentioned, was that Ali Imran was spelled wrongly. It looked like the name of the surah was Ali Imran. So just to point out the Shias, we don't have another Quran. It's the same Ali Imran as everyone knows. And also, Hassan Shah, he kind of let his pen go a little wild there, and he was praising me way too much. So, you know, disregard everything that's about me on that, basically, inshallah. Okay. So, I was asked to speak tonight about, what's going on in the Islamic world and related to Imam Zaman alayhi salam. So, first of all, in this last year has been a very interesting year. We've seen a lot of popular uprisings that have come in the Middle East. We've seen a lot of revolutions, things that we've seen. This last year has been very exciting, more so than maybe the last century. And it's interesting being alive in this time. I don't know how much people are following the news, but just every day there's so much out there just to read about. Now, if we look in, for instance, Tunisia, in Tunis, we see that there is a revolution. There is public, the people rose up against the leader Ben Ali and kicked him out. And they were fighting for democracy, as the West said. And they said that it was a political movement because Ben Ali was an oppressor, he was a monarch. So they wanted him out and they wanted to bring in democracy. Then when they did bring in democracy, it was interesting that in the elections, 87 people from the Islamic Party were elected. And when that happened, the West kind of switched. At first, they were supporting this revolution, and they were supporting this movement for democracy. But once they realized that, wait a second here, this isn't just a political movement, it's a religious movement. They're not only trying to get rid of this monarch, they're trying to make an Islamic, make a state that's more Islamic. Not a complete Islamic state, but they're trying to bring Islamic values into the country. And this was proven by those elections. So the West, they reacted. They said, wait a second, now democracy is in danger. Why is it in danger? Because those that the West wanted to be elected weren't elected. It's the same democracy. There's no difference people vote and someone's elected. It's democracy. But we see here the West was a little upset because they saw it's not just a public or a political movement, but it was a religious and Islamic movement as well. Same thing in Egypt. In Egypt we saw the people rose up. They went to Tahrir Square, which everyone was watching. They had many protests. They ousted their monarch Mubarak. And then what happened? Again, the West was supporting them. The West was backing them up. The West, all the time, you see on all the news, the West was favoring them. But now if you look, right now as we speak, there's a new wave of protests going on in Egypt. And these protests are trying to make, they're trying to raise Islamic values. We saw after the first wave of protests, what was the first thing that the Egyptians did? Does anyone remember? I remember because I was watching it very closely. I wanted to see what these new people do. The first thing they did was they kicked out the Israeli ambassador. Then they cut the water off from Israel because most of the water that the Israelis use comes from Egypt. So they cut that off. And then they opened the Rafah crossing, which was closed for so many years, which kind of blocked Gaza in. So it looked like they were, pro-Islam. Then, shortly thereafter, the government changed and, stopped these movements. But now there's new protests, there's a new wave, and people are trying to, reinstate this. So again, we see it was a political movement, but not only a political movement, also a religious one. Not only a political movement, but also an Islamic one, because they're trying to instill Islamic values in the country. Then other countries as well. I mean, we could list so many. Yemen as well. Bahrain. Bahrain is also very interesting, because the people who are rising up in Bahrain are Shia, which is different than everywhere else. And we see the West is not supporting them like they did other countries. It's not in the news every day. When the people are getting killed and shot, it's not presented by CNN and in a way that they did the other uprisings. Also, they allow foreign militaries to intervene. Saudi Arabia has come in and intervened, and America and the West has allowed that to happen, unlike other places. So again, this movement, it's not only political, but it's Islamic. Now, in Iran, it was very interesting, because at the beginning of these uprisings, at the beginning of these movements, the leader of Iran, Sheikh Hameed, he came out and he made an interesting statement. He said that these movements will not be confined to the Middle East, but they will seep into Europe and the West as well. And we see that in this year, protests have also sparked up in Europe, and in America even more so. In America, we have the Occupy Wall Street movement, if you guys can find it. And these are unprecedented protests where people are protesting in many different cities to numbers that we haven't seen before in America. It's something new, right? So when Sheikh Hameed made that statement, no one believed him, or people were confused. People thought that, maybe he's going a little overboard. Maybe this isn't really going to happen. But it did. It happened. Not saying that he's a prophet and could prophesy things, but he has a good knowledge of world events and was able to recognize that. Now, the point which I wanted to mention about all of these revolutions, and I wanted to ask a question. What do these revolutions have in common? Each one of these revolutions are in different countries. There's different situations, different conditions, but all of them have one thing in common. All of them are against the leader that's in that country. They're against some monarch. They're against some government. Like in America, they're against the 1% who's ruling them, right? They're the 99% against the 1%. Everyone is against some form of government, some leader. They're what's it called? They've lost hope in leadership and have come together to rise up against it. Now, when you look at that with Imam Zaman alayhi salam, when you look at that, you see that one of the clearest signs of Imam Zaman's reappearance. Now, a lot of people, when they talk about the signs of Imam coming back, they mention the Sufyani, they mention the Khorasani. Is this person the Khorasani? Is that person the Sufyani? Is he going to be coming up from that country or not, or whatever? They talk about these things that, they're up for interpretation. They're not clear, right? You have to look into them to try to figure out what's going on. But one of the clearest signs is that everybody in the world will lose hope in their government, in all government systems. Will lose hope in leadership, and they'll be longing for someone to come and save them. You see, in all of these public uprisings, they're getting rid of the monarch or the king or whatever. They're saying, this person, we've lost hope in him. He can't change. He can't help the people. We need something else. And many of the movements, they're not planning ahead in the future exactly what we're going to do once we get him out. But once they get him out, then they sit together and think of something. In America, the Occupy Wall Street movement, if you go to their website, what they say is a movement of people without a leader. That they're saying we don't have a leader. If they had a leader, they'd be much stronger. But right now they're just doing what they can without one. So everyone's looking for this leader. This is one of the clear signs of the Imam's reappearance. So we could gather from that the reappearance is close. Now I don't want to make any promises. Of course you can't make a promise. You can't ever be 100% sure. But if you look at everything that's going on, if you look at all the signs, if you look at the world, if you look at the situation, you could kind of gather that yes, this time is clear. There's a famous saying that from Ayatollah Bahjat, if you know who he is. He was a marja of the Islamic world, one of the top scholars that we had. He passed away a few years ago. He's known for being a very strong arif or mystic, irfan. He was very high. And he said, at least it's quoted, it's very famous that he said, I haven't heard it with my own ears, but I saw it when I go to the Friday prayers in Qom. They had, one time they went, there was a piece of paper and they wrote this on the paper, they typed it up. From his office he said this. There's also many people that I've heard quote this, including some of my teachers. So if it's true or not, I can't, 100% I can't tell you he definitely said this, but there's a very good chance. And he said that we used to tell people that the youth will see the Imam in their lifetime. But now we must tell the old people that you'll see the Imam in your lifetime. So that means it's close. That means it's a good chance that it's close. I can't promise you, but it's a good chance. Now let's look at one other sign before I get into what it actually means to wait. I'm going to read this. It's a long hadith. It's about Qom, the city of Qom, and knowledge spreading from the city of Qom. Right? It's another tradition which shows one of the signs of the reappearance of Imam Zaman. So here's the hadith. It says, verily, soon Kufa will be empty of believers. The city of Kufa will have no more believers. Religious knowledge will disappear from that region. So before, religious knowledge would be spread from Kufa and Najaf. Kufa and Najaf are now connected to each other, almost. But at that time they said Kufa. Now, it'll disappear from that region the way a snake disappears from its abode into a hole in the earth without leaving a trace. So there'll be no more trace. You won't even see religion there. Then it will reappear in the city known as Qom. So at that time, Qom wasn't a big place. No one knew of Qom. Right? This way he says a city that's known as Qom. No one knew this city at that time. So it's not like there's a center of knowledge at this place, and he said that knowledge will be transferred to there. No. Qom was a small, tiny little village that nobody knew about. No one even knew its name. And the Imam is saying that knowledge will be from there. That city will become the treasure of religious knowledge and excellence, which we see today. From there, it will spread throughout the world, thoroughly eliminating ignorance in matters of religion among the destitute, including women. So from there, from Qom, knowledge about Islam will spread around the world. Now, today, what's happening? Today, there's other centers of knowledge. In Iraq, there's still a Hawza. In Syria, there's a Hawza. In other places, there's Islamic institutions of teaching Islam. But when you look on the overall picture, it's people who go to Qom and study, and then they spread Islam throughout the world. So, for instance, I'm coming from Qom. I'm not saying that I'm a scholar who's spreading Islam throughout the world. But one example. I'm here, I went to Qom, and here I am speaking about Islam to you. And there's a million other, not a million, but there's many other ulama who's the same thing throughout the world. In Qom we have students from over 100 countries, from China, from South America, from Europe, from Africa, from Australia, from every continent, except for maybe the North Pole. So there's people from everywhere. And they'll go back to their countries and they'll spread Islam. So this hadith, it seems as it's coming true. Also, another point that should be mentioned with that is he said that women are also included. Now, when we mentioned the 313 men that are going to come and be the commanders of Imam Zaman's army, right? We mentioned these. This number you've always heard. There's even a movie called 313. This number is very famous. But we always overlook the women. There's also going to be women who are going to be the close companions of Imam Zaman. There's going to be women who are going to be able to be the leaders in his movement as well. And let me read for you one hadith about that, so we can take it from the words of the Imams, not my words. It says here what Imam Waqar alayhi salam said. It's been narrated that Imam Waqar alayhi salam said, the Mahdi will rise up along with 313 men and 50 women. So there's 313 men and 50 women. Then it says, it also later on it explains how they rise up in all of this, which we won't get into now. But these women are also important. Now let's go back to the hadith that we're talking about. About Qawm. Thank you, Lord. It says, this will happen close to the appearance of our Qa'im. Our Qa'im meaning Imam Zaman alayhi salam. So what will be close to his appearance? That knowledge will be spread from Qawm. So when you see that happening, know that the time is near. When you see that there's many ulama in Qawm, concentrated in Qawm, who then go out and spread Islam throughout the world, either physically or through the internet or through books or however it is, originating from Qawm, they know that the time is near, that we won't have to wait too much longer. In this way, God will make Qawm and its inhabitants a substitute for His proof. Religious knowledge will spread across nations from Qawm, and God's proof will have been provided to all of the people in such a way that there won't be a single person on earth who would not have heard about the religion and wisdom. It will be following this event that our Qa'im, Imam Zaman alayhi salam, will reappear. So this is, a preliminary step. Then he says God's punishment and tribulation will be ready for everyone who rejects it. Because at this time everyone should know about it. The people from Qawm have went and spread religion. Everyone should know. Everyone's heard about it. So if you reject it now, you're rejecting it with knowledge, and that's dangerous. So this is a hadith. So when we look, we see in the world all of these uprisings against the current systems of government and leadership, and people searching for something new, people looking for some hope, something to save them from the oppression that they're feeling. We have that on one side, and then we have other hadiths which say that this, the time that's close to the reappearance of the Imam is when people lose hope in all systems of government, all leadership, and are looking for a savior. We see that happening. There's also hadith saying that knowledge will emanate from Qawm and spread throughout the world. And when this does, know that the time of the Imam is near. And we see that this is happening right now. No one can deny it. It's happening. So that means, according to these traditions, that the time is close. That it's not going to be too much longer. So what does that mean? What does that mean for us? What should we be doing? Should we just be waiting for it? Or should we be proactive in waiting for it? Should we sit down and just wait for it to happen? Or should we prepare ourselves for its advent? This is something which I want to look into for a few minutes before we finish this speech with the salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Now there's two types of waiting for the Imam. There's an apparent form, a zahiri form, and a non-apparent form, a batini form, an esoteric form. Now the zahiri form is praying. So we always pray for the Imam's reappearance. After Salat we pray, throughout the day we pray, Allahumma ajjal li waliyaka al-faraj. We're always praying for Imam to come back. Right? This is one way. This is good, but it's not enough. Because that's just the outside shell of what waiting, of what intizar means. Right? We have to get into the essence and figure out what does it really mean to be waiting for the Imam. Now, Sheikh Mutahhir, he was a very famous scholar. He was martyred, a couple decades ago. He talked about this. He gave an example of what it really means to wait. And I want to share this example with you because it made me understand, and I'm hoping it will make you understand as well. Now, what he said is, imagine that you invite a friend, a dear friend of yours, to your house as a guest for dinner, like next week, right? So in 1 week, today's Saturday, so next Saturday, or today's Sunday, right? Sunday, next Sunday. Then, as the days of the week pass by, you'll be thinking about this. Maybe a couple of days before he comes, you'll go out and you'll buy some meat, or you'll buy food so you could cook. The night before he comes, maybe you'll start preparing the meals. Maybe you'll wait till the day. And then once it's the day, you'll clean your house. You'll get ready. When he's going to come, you say he's coming at 6. So at 5 o'clock, everything's ready. You're sitting down, you're waiting for him. You're anxious. The car drives up. Your heart starts to beat fast. You're waiting for your friend to come. Right? This is waiting. Now, imagine it's not your friend. Imagine you invited this, your scholar, Sayyid Naqvi. You invited him to come. This feeling, this anxiousness, this preparation would increase. Right? Because it's not just a normal friend now. Now it's someone who's important. Someone who's respected. Of course your friends are also respected, but more respected. Right? So the anxiousness increases. Then imagine it's your marja. Sayyid Sistani, Sayyid Khamenei, whoever. And he's coming to your house. Imagine the feeling you'd have. You wouldn't be able to control yourself. Right? When an hour before he comes, you see his car pull up. What would you be thinking at that time? Right? Imagine the preparation you'd go through. You'd make your house so clean you could see your reflection in the walls. Right? You'd do everything. Then imagine it's the Imam. Because of course, the Muraja are nothing compared to the Imam. So imagine the Imam is coming. Imagine you're able to meet the Imam. You wouldn't be able to, I wouldn't be able to control myself. Imagine that feeling, that anxiousness, that desire. You know he's going to be coming soon. This is how we should be feeling. This is what we should be. We should be feeling, of course we're not going to, I'm not saying we should go home and clean our houses and hope he comes, but we need to prepare ourselves for his advent. We have to know he's coming soon. And we have to be prepared for this. It's not something we could just wait, and then when he comes in the Kaaba and calls, and okay, Bismillah, then we're going to go. No, we have to be prepared for it. Right now, we have to actively move to be prepared. Now, you might ask a question. You might say, oh, well, I'm prepared. When the Imam comes, I'm definitely going to support him. No way. How could you imagine the Imam comes and I say, well, I'll come tomorrow. No way. Once he comes and he calls, I'm on the next plane to Mecca. Hopefully I'm already there. Definitely. And then we say, wait, you also take into consideration that the hadith that I mentioned, 313 people and 50 women. We see, all he is waiting for this number. You can imagine there's not that many people. Look, in this room we have, I don't know how many people, 20 people, 30 people, however many people. Imagine, that's just a small number. Imagine the whole UK. There's a number of religious people in the UK. The whole of Europe, the Middle East, Iran, 70 million people in Iran. Imagine there's not 313 people. How does that make sense? It's because preparing for the Imam is not something that's as easy as it might seem. It's something that we have to put effort in. Now there's a famous story that I want to mention to show you you can see if we're prepared or not. There's two stories I'm going to mention. One of them is a story that's famously mentioned on the Minbar. It's a story that I've heard a number of ulama say, and I've read it in a couple books as well. But again, 100% if it happened or not, I can't, I won't, on the day of judgment, I can't say yes or no 100%. But I've seen it a number of times, and it helps picture. what I'm trying to talk about. There was a famous speaker in Isfahan. Isfahan's a city in Iran. And this speaker, he'd always speak about Imam Zaman alayhi salam. Always. And he would always mention these 313. And one day in his speech, he's addressing 5,000 people in a huge masjid. And he said, all we need is 313. And out of these 5,000 people, there has to be 313 people who are religious, who are prepared, who are ready for the Imam's return. And then, this is only Isfahan. Imagine Qom, Tehran, Najaf, Karbala, all of these cities. There's so many mu'mins everywhere. How could it be that only 313 are needed? That doesn't make sense. And he went home. Then it said that Imam Zaman himself, alayhi salam, came to his house that night, knocked on his door, and introduced himself. He said, so, you say that there's 313 people here. Tomorrow, gather the 40 most religious people you know in Isfahan, who are more religious than everybody else, who would definitely support me if I came back. 100%. You gather them and let's see. Of course, I'm paraphrasing. Then, the next day, when he comes, he gathers the 40 people in his courtyard. From his courtyard, there are stairs that are leading up to a room on the second floor of his house. And Imam Zaman is in that room. So the Imam says, tell the first person to come up and meet me and pledge allegiance. So the first person, imagine you're in that courtyard. Everyone would be racing to be that first person. The Imam is up there. Everyone would want to go up there. So one person goes up, walks up the stairs. When he gets to the top of the stairs, he hears a loud scream. Everyone hears a loud scream, and then blood flows down the stairs. Now everyone in the courtyard is thinking, wait a second, what's going on? Something's happening here. So Imam says, okay, second person. So now, there's not that race to go again. But someone volunteers and walks a little slower up the stairs, reaches the top, again, a scream, and more blood. Then people start to leave. So wait, I don't want any of this. I don't know what's happening, but I think the Molana has gone crazy. And I don't want to go up those stairs. So the Imam calls a third person. Third person walks up the stairs, same thing. When he gets up to the top, a scream and more blood. When the Imam calls for the fourth person, no one's there. Everyone had left. Then the owner of the house walks up the stairs, opens the door. He sees the three people are sitting down, at the end of the room, and there's 3 dead sheep at the top of the stairs. And the Imam says, okay, these people won't even walk up a flight of stairs. And you think that they're going to support me when I come back? And as I said, this was a story. You could feel what I'm talking about through this story, but it's a story. I can't tell if it's 100% or not. But there is a hadith we have in the lifetime of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. And this one, there's hadith behind this one. So there's more truth to it. Now it's said that in the time of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, a person came from Khorasan. Everyone knows Khorasan is in modern day Iran and Afghanistan. It's that area. And a person came from there and visited the Imam. He said, Imam, Yabna Rasulullah, we're 50,000 strong in Khorasan, and we're ready to fight for you, to support you, to defend you, so you can overcome the government and become the leader, because you're the righteous guide, you're the person, you're the Imam. The Khalifat is for you, not for anyone else. So we're prepared for that. We're ready to defend you. Now, when you hear that, the Imam, what do you think the Imam would respond? Okay, now I have my support, let's go. He said, wait a second. He started questioning him. He said, you're my follower. Yes. You'll do anything I tell you. Yes. In those days, there were huge ovens. The ovens weren't as they are today. So there are huge ovens, which had doors, and you'd have to put wood in there to get on fire. So he has one of these ovens. He said, if you're my follower, open this door and walk in the oven and sit down in it. Yeah? If you'll do whatever I say. So the guy says, wait a second, what are you talking about? I don't get it. The Imam says, if you're my follower, go in that oven and sit down. So the man from Khorasan said, look, I love you, but I'm not going to go in that oven. Sorry, that's not happening. So the Imam said, okay. One of the Imam's servants comes in. The Imam tells him, go in the oven. He takes his sandals off, he opens the door, walks in the oven, sits down and closes the door from the inside, closes the door. And then the Imam turns to this man in Khorasan, starts chit-chatting. So how's the weather? How's everything going? How are the people? The man from Khorasan said, is a man burning in the oven? You're asking me about weather? What's going on? Then the Imam told him to get out. The guy opened the door, walked out the oven, brushed himself off and left. So the Imam tells this guy from Khorasan, he says, if I had 5 people like him, I'd rise up. Yeah. Forget about these 50,000 people. If I had 5 people like that. Now we have to ask ourselves, would we have walked up those stairs? Would we have gotten into that oven? Are we prepared to do whatever it takes to follow the Imam? No matter what he asks for us? To give up our lives in an instant? To give up everything we own in an instant? Are we prepared or not? If we are prepared, alhamdulillah, you could teach me inshallah how to be prepared. If we're not prepared, then we have to work on ourselves. We have to try to get to that point where we will be at that level. Because we don't want to be just a regular mu'min, just a regular believer. We want to be one of those 313. We want to do what it takes to make sure that the Imam comes back quicker. We want to do everything that we can in our ability. One of the things that we have to do is prepare ourselves. Now, we could go on forever talking about how to prepare ourselves. First thing, there's no magic potion. There's nothing you can drink. There's no one word that you could say. There's no shortcuts. It's a lengthy process and it's difficult. But we have to start from somewhere. Now the place that the teachers of akhlaq say to start from is called taqwa. Piety. Now what is taqwa? What is piety? This is the foundation of our belief. If we are able to be pious and we work on ourselves, then we'll be able to be prepared for His coming. If we're muttaqi, if we're pious people, we will be prepared. Now, to become pious is easy, but to retain the piety, that's a little more difficult. To become pious, first of all, what is piety? The definition of piety, there's many different definitions. There's many different books you could read with different definitions. What I've understood from the various definitions and the various explanations that was given to me is that piety means it's a state that one is in when they perform all of their wajib actions and stay away from everything that's haram. You perform all of your wajibat and you stay away from all of the muharramat. That easy. And to become pious, all you have to do is make the intention to do so. Right now in this room, in this instant, if you make an intention sincerely to Allah and say that I am ready right now to perform all of my wajibat and to stay away from all of the sins, then right now you will become pious. Right now you will become a muttaqi. The muttaqi that are praised in the Quran. It's not something that's impossible. All this is an intention. But the longer you're able to be sincere to that pledge, to keep this pledge, then the stronger your piety becomes. So if you make this pledge now, and then you're able to perform your duties and stay away from the harams for 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, then the 4th day will be easier, the 5th day will be easier. It'll keep getting stronger and stronger, and it'll prevent you from things. There's a famous teacher of akhlaq that we have in Qom. I don't know if most of you have probably heard of him. His name is Ayatollah Khoshvaqt. right? He's very famous. Now, Ayatul Khoshbakht, first of all, to akhlaq teachers or teachers of ethics in Islam, there's many different types. But just to mention a couple points, because it's important. In the West, we see that everybody stands up and they become akhlaq teachers. Now, an akhlaq teacher needs two qualifications to be a true teacher of akhlaq. Two qualifications. One of them is that the person is a mujtahid. He's able to derive religious rulings from their sources. Why? Because when you look at if you want a program of akhlaq, if you want to follow what the Ahlul Bayt have said about how to get closer to Allah, you have to listen to someone who knows how to figure out what they've said. It's not just reading one hadith here or reading one book there. You have to go through all of the hadith and put them together and figure out exactly what's being said. So being a mujtahid is important. You won't find someone who's a mujtahid giving people vegan diets as a way to get closer to Allah. Right? You won't find people, as a mujtahid saying that promoting pluralism and that the laws of Islam have been outdated. You won't see this. And then still trying to get closer to Allah with that belief. That's the first one. Second one is that they have to be accredited by a previous teacher. So someone who is already established and is known as an akhlaq teacher has to give this person permission to teach. So when you do that, because having the knowledge is one thing, but you also have to be on a level where you won't mislead people for personal gain. So for instance, I was hearing about one of these pseudo akhlaq teachers who was saying that, why do you do taqleed to a marja? You should do taqleed to an arif, a teacher of ethics, because Allah tells them the rules in their dreams, whereas the maraja can make mistakes. And he's saying this, why? He's saying this so people follow him, so he has a following, so he becomes famous, because it's clear that that's wrong. Right? So these are two things. Now Ayatul Khoshbakht has both of them. Both, he's a mujtahid and he was the student of Allama Tabatabai who gave him permission to teach akhlaq. So he's someone who we could listen to. He's someone who we could be comfortable to take his advice. Now, his akhlaq lessons are very interesting. Right? You'll go to them and he'll recite a surah of the Quran and then do a small tafsir of this surah. He recites Surah Shams. Right? وَالشَّمْسِ وَضُحَاهَا وَالْقَمَرِ ذَا تَلَاهَا. Surah Shams. And he says in this surah, Allah swears 11 times by different, by the sun and the moon and different things. 11 times. And then after he swears 11 times, what does he say? قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ زَكَاهَا. The one who purifies himself has reached salvation, is successful. Right? Then he says, this zakah, tazkiyah, it means taqwa. Tazkiyah and taqwa, they're the same thing. Right? This purification is taqwa. And when would you have taqwa? Why would you, taqwa means fearing God. Taqwa, he says, means fearing God. The only time you would fear Allah is if you commit a sin. If you don't commit a sin, if you live your life exactly how you're supposed to, you won't fear God. The only time you fear Him is when you commit a sin. So therefore, be pious, don't commit sins, and you'll be successful. He's 5-10 minutes, he says that. Then it's a question and answer session. So when you sit there, you could imagine a million different questions come at him. Like we'll have a question and answer after this speech. I'm sure you'll have a million different questions. There are all kinds of questions. How can we be more sincere? How can our namaz, our prayer, how can we feel our prayer better? I can't wake up for the midnight prayer. What should I do? A million different things. The answer that he gives to every single question, taqwa. 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 Be pious. When you're pious, you keep this piety, you become stronger. And the stronger you become, the longer you keep it, then the easier everything else becomes. The easier it is to follow your religion. So if you keep it for one day, the second day, you'll see it's easier. The third day it's easier. Fourth day it's easier. And if the longer you keep it, the stronger you become. Now there's only one condition. There's a lot of conditions. There's just one final point I want to mention. That when we want to be pious, when we want to practice taqwa, when we want to perform all of our obligations, all of the wajibat, and stay away from all of the muharramat, the first thing we have to do is know what is wajib and what is haram. If we don't know what sins are, if we don't know what our religious duties are, how are we supposed to perform them? First thing we have to do is know it. So that means we have to study. That means we can't just sit down and do what we know and not look into our religion any further. We have so many books available in English. The Tozi Masails, the books of Islamic laws. They're available. You can buy them. You can have them in your house, open them and read them. Even teachers of akhlaq, they advise people to read a few fatwas every day just to keep them in your mind. So you don't forget them. But read them. Know what's halal and what's haram. That's number one. The websites of the Muraja, they work. You can go there. It's question and answers. You can ask your questions. You could read other people's questions and answers. Their books are online. You could review it. You could learn. There's ulama that are in your city. You have Sayyid Naqvi. You have Sayyid Mohsin here for a few days. You could ask them. Ask them to teach you. If you have a question, go to them and ask them. They'll tell you. You could learn from them. Take advantage of these things. Because if you don't, if there was something that you could have known and you didn't learn it, you're not going to be excused on the Day of Judgment. Ignorance will only be an excuse if there was no way for you to learn it. If it's your fault that you didn't go out and seek the knowledge, then Allah will punish you, even though you didn't know. So knowledge is important. So what did we say today? What was it? This long speech that bored many of you. What was this speech about? First we talked about the conditions of the world. And then we tried to show that these conditions that exist they point to the signs of Imam Zaman, that it looks like he's coming back, that it looks like he's going to return soon. Then we pointed out, we showed that it's necessary to prepare ourselves for his advent. We can't just sit down idly and do nothing. We have to be prepared for him to come back. How do we prepare ourselves? By having taqwa. What is the condition of taqwa? Learning what's wajib and what's haram. So inshallah with that, I'll close the speech and open it up for question and answer with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa alayhi.